Hello everyone. So in break to my usual videos, or maybe not, this is another compilation of my 7 basic plot series. Now one of the main reasons for me doing this is that I noticed some of the more common plots, such as Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches and so on, they were getting quite a few views, but a lot of the lesser known out of the 7 weren't getting as many, and the playlist wasn't having the let's say, pool as what I thought it might. So I decided to stitch them all together so people are exposed to the lesser known plots. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this little series, and I will hand over to Past Lauren, who will begin with Overcoming the Monster. Enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome. Today's video is all about plotting, but I'm going to talk about the first of the 7 plots, Overcoming the Monster. Now, the Overcoming the Monster plot was identified by Christopher Booker, who was the author of The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. This book suggests that every story we've ever encountered is one of only 7 plots. I will also make videos on the other 6, and of course the applications to Dungeons & Dragons game writing and other TTRPGs. What I talk about is always very transferable. Right, back to Overcoming the Monster. So this particular narrative focuses on a hero, or group of heroes, who face and ultimately triumph over a supervillain, or monster. The monster can take many forms. It could be an actual creature, a force for evil, or a tyrannical ruler, for example. The plot tends to resonate with people because it reflects our need to overcome challenges or adversity. Simply put, we want to read about stories where the hero succeeds and defeats the foe because we would want that for ourselves. Because of its flexible structure, the Overcoming the Monster plot is ideal for fantasy storytelling and tabletop RPGs, including Dungeons & Dragons. To show you how exactly this narrative structure fits with D&D storytelling, I'm going to outline its 5 stages and show how well they align with encounters or plot lines that are common in all fantasy TTRPGs. Anticipation stage and call. This stage introduces the impending doom, danger, threat, whatever you want to call it, and signals the beginning of adventure. It establishes the stakes and provides a clear reason for the heroes to start their journey. Off the top of my head, examples include a world-ending threat, oppression, and a castle or fortress under siege. All of these are reasons players are answering the call to help. The anticipation stage could begin in the bustling tavern, where over some ales, hush whispers of a foul beast reach our players. Alternatively, a mayor pleads with the heroes to save their town from destruction. Or the adventurers encounter signs of the monster's destruction for themselves. A razed village or tracks leading into a dark forest. Tips for dungeon masters or game masters. Use vivid descriptions to set the tone. Is the monster a giant dragon that's turned the sky black with its wings, or a shadowy creature haunting a remote village? Hook your players emotionally. Maybe the creature has kidnapped someone important to them, or has in their possession something they need. Introduce NPCs who remind the players of the high stakes. Dream stage. Our heroes are optimistic and everything seems hopeful. They're doing things such as gathering information, acquiring new weapons, and forming alliances. Think of this stage as a time of growth, excitement, and even camaraderie, as your players feel they are rising to the challenge. In D&D, the dream stage can involve the players seeking out an ancient mage who knows the monster's weaknesses, or venturing into a forgotten dungeon to retrieve a wondrous weapon. It can also include side quests that benefit their preparation, let's say. Tips for DMs. Provide opportunities for the players to explore and strategize. Perhaps they discover the monster is vulnerable to a specific element, or they need a magical artifact to defeat it. Add some more light-hearted social encounters to balance the tension of the upcoming battle. Reward creative problem solving. If the players have great ideas, give them inspiration. Frustration stage. The turning point comes when the heroes or players face the monster or get a taste of its power. This is the first time they feel the challenge is far greater than they anticipated. This stage forces everyone to confront their fears or limitations. In a D&D game, this could be an initial encounter with the monster where the party is forced to retreat, or a series of smaller, grueling battles that leave everyone battered and shaken. Maybe the players realise that their initial plan won't work and they need a different approach. Tips for DMs. Use this stage to create tension and suspense. Perhaps a villain or monster has a power the players weren't expecting, or it has useful resistances. Introduce a ticking clock. Maybe the monster's influence is spreading faster than hoped, or a ritual concocted by a powerful witch or warlock is empowering it. Don't necessarily go easy on your players, but avoid outright annihilating them, unless it serves the story. For example, if the party loses, perhaps an NPC rescues them, which gives them time to come up with another plan. Nightmare stage. This is the darkest hour of the story or adventure. The monster's power is at its highest and all hope seems lost. The heroes face overwhelming odds and the situation feels, well, hopeless. However, this is also arguably the most exciting part of the game, the showdown with our supervillain or monster. In D&D, the nightmare stage may take place in a monster's lair, a foreboding castle, hint hint Strahd, a dark forest or the ruins of an ancient temple. The environment itself could be as dangerous as the monster, filled with traps or minions. The heroes may suffer losses, whether it's a beloved NPC or their own equipment and resources, but there is that key moment of reversal where victory is snatched from the jaws of defeat. Tips for DMs. Make the lair memorable. Use detailed descriptions to create a sense of dread. Perhaps the walls are lined with skulls of those who dared enter before them, or the air is thick with dark magic. Design a dynamic battle and keep players on their toes. You could give the monster unique abilities, or legendary actions for example. Allow moments of character growth. How do the characters or players react to the pressure? Do they rise to the occasion, or do they get a little frustrated? The thrilling escape from death and the death of the monster. Did the heroes triumph against the odds and win in a spectacular fashion, or by the skin of their teeth? The story's concluded, or is it? Is this the point where you transition to a new chapter of your adventure, or start a brand new one? In D&D, the aftermath of the climactic battle is where the party reflects and regroups, be it how they handle slaying the monster, banishing it, or finding a way to seal its power. Their victory should feel very satisfying and quite the achievement. Tips for DMs. Ask players or characters how they feel. You can do this with NPCs or as a narrator as you describe the closing scenes. Let player creativity shine. If they use clever tactics, reward them by letting them keep any loot from the lair. Offer a satisfying resolution. How does the world change after the monster's defeat? Is it a cause for celebration, or does the victory come at a cost? First steps and outlining. But how do you even begin to write an overcoming the monster adventure? Never mind coming up with the ideas. Fortunately, I'm going to quickly run through how you can make the first steps. When it comes to building your world and villain, is the monster an ancient evil that has awakened after centuries, or a newly arrived threat wreaking havoc? I'd recommend using character backstories to make the threat personal. Those backstories can also help a lot with ideation too, so see them as a valuable resource. For opportunities of exploration and discovery, use rich world building. What are the buildings made from? Is the main location a thriving metropolis, or a remote enclave atop a mountain? The imagery you draw upon sets the tone and vibe for the adventure. Additionally, create NPCs players can interact with, write lore they can uncover, and piece together the monster's history and weaknesses. All of these steps help with the development of side quests too. This will all pay off in the dream stage, where players are optimistic and making plans, and are keen to find resources and interact with your world. Next, think about pacing. The frustration and nightmare stages build suspense and force players to think critically. This is the ideal point to use combat encounters, puzzles, or even moral dilemmas to challenge them. With the climactic showdown or battle, if that wasn't clear, make it big. Incorporate environmental hazards, unique monster abilities, and opportunities for creative play. Let your players feel the weight of their decisions leading up to this moment. Finally, write a good ending. It's harder than you think, so approach this stage with care. What I suggest is, set up your adventure for a satisfying conclusion. Is it a cause for celebration, or will the outcome be a bittersweet victory? Either way, let the players thoughtfully comment on their journey. Hello everyone, and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to explore the Rags to Riches plot from Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. This plot is the second of the 7, and centres around a protagonist who rises from destitution or obscurity to achieve wealth, success, or happiness. This structure provides another great scaffold or framework for crafting compelling stories, including those in tabletop role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons. Like my previous video on overcoming the monster, I will outline the 5 key stages and how they can support an outline for your D&D campaign. By using this structure, game masters can create engaging narratives that give players a sense of growth, challenge, and ultimately triumph. So without further ado, let's begin. Initial wretchedness at home. This stage introduces our protagonist, or heroes, in a lowly state. They are often oppressed, overlooked, or trapped in a mundane and unsatisfying life. Horrible figures may mistreat and look down upon them with scorn. This initial hardship establishes a stark contrast to the rewards and triumphs awaiting them later in the story. An off the top of my head example of where this is obvious is Cinderella. Of course that's not a D&D example, but if I were to choose a character that had a similar start in life, I'd suggest Vecna, as he faced a life of servitude as a child, though his outcome is much more tragic and dark. How do we apply this to D&D? A character's backstory might include humble beginnings, such as starting out as a penniless orphan in a bustling city, struggling to survive. The DM or GM can emphasise the harshness of their environment through encounters with corrupt officials, dangerous thieves, and even societal biases. To kick off the actual adventure though, the GM could start small. Maybe a gang is trying to extort locals, which sets the stage for the hero's initial call to action, or help. Out into the world, initial success. Our heroes step out of their comfort zone and begin to find their footing. They might gain allies, acquire a small taste of success, or demonstrate some innate potential. They of course face some challenges, but nothing they can't handle. How do we apply this to D&D? The DM can create an early adventure that allows the heroes to prove themselves on a small stage. For example, they might foil a local bandit raid, earning the gratitude of the townsfolk and a small cash reward. This success builds momentum and provides a sense of accomplishment, which hints at some greater potential lying dormant within them. This stage is also an opportunity to introduce a larger world and hint at what's to come. Perhaps the bandits are part of a larger criminal syndicate. What I'm saying is that this is a time to bring in a bit of foreshadowing, or lean on it more if you've been doing this already. The central crisis. Basically, everything starts to go a bit wrong. The hero's initial successes are challenged, and old foes may rear their ugly heads once more. This crisis often threatens to undo their progress and forces them to confront their weaknesses or fears. How do we apply this to D&D? After their initial victories, the heroes encounter a formidable foe or face the consequences of their choices. Perhaps they angered a powerful noble or discover that their actions had unintentionally harmed the innocent townsfolk. The crisis might also involve internal conflicts among the party, such as differing goals and viewpoints. On that note, an underlying moral dilemma may unfold within the group. Maybe some of the group doesn't want to take a reward, as they don't want to put a price on their help. This stage tests the heroes, and of course players' resolve and teamwork. The GM can use this moment to deepen a story's stakes, like I mentioned before, by introducing or reintroducing a powerful villain who disrupts the party's plans. Alternatively, maybe their newfound wealth has made them a target. What I'm saying is that this conflict is a warm-up to an even bigger one, so make it significant. Independence and final ordeal. So our heroes have overcome the first serious test of their abilities and emerge in a new light. They think this is it, but unfortunately for them, there is worse to come. Cue the final ordeal. This stage represents everything they've been preparing for, as they prove their worth and begin to fully transform. Will they succeed or fail? How do we apply this to D&D? The heroes face their biggest battle yet, or a complex challenge that puts their skills, strategy, and unity to the ultimate test. This could involve confronting the campaign's old foe again, or the primary antagonist, navigating a proper deadly dungeon, or solving a world-threatening crisis. My advice, make the stakes really high so the resolution feels earned. What's the worst thing that could happen if our heroes don't overcome this final challenge or obstacle? With the deadly dungeon, that's self-explanatory. One misstep can have lethal consequences. Perhaps it's up to our dexterous rogue to navigate the dungeon's last and most treacherous tunnel to find a way out. They've been preparing for this moment for years, and now it's here, and their party depends on them. The DM might include elements from the PC's backstories to make the ordeal personal. For example, a once lowly scribe takes on the wizards who were so cruel to them. Going back to our dungeon example, maybe this tunnel goes deep into a cave network, and our rogue has to overcome their claustrophobia, so that their training shines through. Final union. Also, the final stage of our plot. Our heroes achieve their ultimate reward. They secure not just material wealth or power, but also personal fulfilment and a sense of belonging. This stage is about reaping what they have sowed. They've proven themselves, and now it's time to enjoy the reward. Our heroes are no longer dismissed by others. How do we apply this to D&D? After successfully completing the ordeal, the party enjoys the fruits of their labour. This could mean restoring peace to a troubled land, earning recognition as heroes, or achieving personal goals such as reclaiming a lost family heirloom or founding a guild. The DM can craft an epilogue of sorts to highlight each character's growth. For example, the orphan might be celebrated as a saviour, while the outcast finds acceptance among new allies. This stage provides closure and rewards players for their journey. How the Rags to Riches plot enhances D&D campaigns. The Rags to Riches plot is particularly suited to D&D because it is naturally progressive and drives change. Players start with low-level characters, struggling against minor threats, and gradually become powerful adventurers, capable of shaping the world around them. Here's how you can use the Rags to Riches plot in your adventure. Emotional engagement. The huge contrast between the characters' humble beginnings and their eventual triumph creates a satisfying arc. Players become emotionally invested in their characters' growth, and this makes the victories more meaningful. Player motivation. The promise of rising above hardship is naturally satisfying, whether it's reclaiming a stolen kingdom or earning respect. The Rags to Riches plot provides a clear and structured goal. Versatility. This structure works across plenty of genres and settings. It could be adapted for a gritty urban campaign, a whimsical fairy tale, or a high fantasy adventure. Don't forget, the initial wretchedness could be poverty or inexperience. Opportunity for collaboration. The plot naturally encourages teamwork, as characters must rely on each other to overcome adversity. The DM can design challenges that require creative problem solving and cooperation, strengthen the party's and players' bond. Character development. The stages of the Rags to Riches plot align with character arcs, encouraging players to explore their PC's personalities, relationships, and growth. For example, a rogue might grapple with the mistrust of others before learning to rely on their party, while a cleric might struggle with doubts about their faith before emerging stronger. Tips for Dungeon Masters. To effectively use the Rags to Riches plot in a D&D campaign, consider the following tips. Establish clear stakes. Make the characters' initial struggles relatable. Whether it's fighting for survival, seeking redemption, or chasing a dream, regardless, ensure the stakes are worthwhile. Pacing. Balance the pacing of the story. To keep your players interested, early successes should feel significant, but they shouldn't resolve the overarching conflict too quickly. Similarly, the central crisis should be challenging without feeling impossible. Personalise the journey. Tie the plot stages to the characters' backstories and goals. This personalisation adds depth and ensures that the story resonates with the players. Reward growth. As the characters progress, reflect their growth. NPCs, for example, may start treating them with increasing respect. Additionally, the consequences of their choices should have more of an impact as they gain influence. Celebrate the end and their triumph. The aftermath of the final ordeal should feel rewarding. Create memorable NPC social encounters and offer meaningful rewards to highlight the weight of their achievements. The Rags to Riches plot is all about growth and triumph, making it an ideal storytelling scaffold for Dungeons & Dragons and other TTRPGs, of course. By following its 5 stages, writers and DMs can give their players a sense of purpose and fulfilment. Whether the characters rise from obscurity to fame or from poverty to prosperity, their journey should leave a lasting impact long after the adventure is over, like coming to the end of a good book. Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the quest from the 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories by Christopher Booker. The quest plot centres around a hero or group of heroes as they set their sights on achieving a specific goal. During their journey, they face challenges, overcome obstacles, and grow in character. Also, it's worth mentioning that these challenging journeys do not necessarily have to be physical. They can be psychological, and the reward can be material or spiritual. This structure is pretty ubiquitous and is in plenty of myths, novels, films, and even TTRPGs, which is what makes it the perfect scaffold when writing a Dungeons & Dragons game. By understanding the mechanics, the quest plot, Game Masters or Dungeon Masters can create immersive stories that draw players into the game, which is what we all want. Right, so let's break down the 5 stages of the quest plot. The call. Our heroes' lives are dull or intolerable, and they are waiting for some sort of change to happen. To prompt that change, they are given a supernatural or visionary direction that pushes them towards a distant, life-renewing goal. The journey. This puts everything in motion. They may begin to set out across a rough and dangerous terrain, and later encounter life-threatening ordeals or trials. It's also important to mention here that the journey stage takes up the lion's share of the story, so you need to focus your time and energy on it. As I've mentioned before, trials can be environmental, such as difficult terrain, but they can also include monsters, temptation, a trip to the underworld for some help, or some form of deadly opposite. A deadly opposite occurs when our heroes are sandwiched between 2 dangers. At this stage, it's also pivotal to introduce companions, or NPCs, to assist our heroes in achieving their goals. Usually these companions have something our heroes lack. For example, if the heroes are impulsive, the companions will have patience. Another type of NPC to include is a helper. These characters appear along the way and offer something useful. An example of a helper could be a wizened sorcerer who dispenses knowledge or wisdom only to disappear and move on. Arrival and frustration. Our heroes are within touching distance of their goal, but some obstacles stand in their way. They need to overcome these to secure the goal. The final ordeals. These often appear as a series of tests, usually in 3s. However, our heroes should be the only ones capable of completing a 3rd and final trial, proving them worthy of the prize at the end. At the end of the ordeal, they make a daring and dangerous escape. The goal. The goal is achieved. Hooray! Common goal achievements include things like destroying a cursed object and retrieving some sort of life-transforming treasure, or even something else entirely that demonstrates how much they have grown. Good examples of the quest plot are The Lord of the Rings, The Odyssey, and any Indiana Jones films, King Arthur, and The Adventures of Robin Hood. But how exactly do we apply the quest plot to TTRPG writing? Fortunately, I've got some helpful examples. But before I get to those, if you've enjoyed this video so far, give it a like or subscribe to the channel, as it's a great way to support it. Writing a compelling call to adventure. When writing an inciting incident, I often refer to my mantra: if in doubt, make it big and theatrical. Remember that our heroes are turning their lives upside down to go on this journey, so make it worthwhile. When writing a compelling call to adventure, think about why anyone would answer it. What's the hook? Usually there are 3 big motivators, or character hooks: money, discovery, and righting a wrong. In my opinion, they tend to crop up the most in different forms. What character hooks could your players use for the following adventure calls? A kingdom is about to be overthrown. The heir or princess needs a long-lost staff to boost their power and stop the tyrants from taking over. A mysterious patron hires our heroes to retrieve a stolen and also priceless painting. Some say this work of art is enchanted, others whisper of a curse. An ancient prophecy is discovered on an old parchment. It says our heroes are destined to prevent a planet-killing cataclysm. A friend has been kidnapped, and our heroes must travel to dangerous territory to rescue them. Planning the journey. This is where character growth, NPCs, and world building take centre stage. Don't forget, this is where your players will spend the bulk of the adventure, so invest your time and writing energy in this stage. Geography. Take a setting and go full in. Is it urban or rural? Will you create harsh deserts or flooded cities? How about a bleak mountain village? Or a lush enchanted forest? Think about your language and word choice when describing these environments. The more accurate your descriptions are, the richer your world will be. Who or what is standing in the way of our heroes' goals? Is it malevolent spirits or a harsh environment? Or is it a force for evil or something more psychological, a fatal flaw perhaps? Also, what will your deadly opposites be? Write compelling companions. Were the companions rival adventurers who made good on their word and are now part of the team? Similar to an enemies to friends trope. Or are these companions just that? Lifelong friends who all met in a magic academy, for example. Choose helpers wisely. A wise sage, a witty witch, or an elder healer. All helpers must have some link to the overarching story and shouldn't be shoehorned in. If you're introducing a wise sage, why did the group encounter them at that very moment? What place is the sage there? Yes, they could have all mysteriously crossed paths, but I don't think that's very satisfying. We need to drop a few breadcrumbs before the helper appears. Designing frustrating ordeals and tests. It's all about the journey, not the end goal. Well, sort of. The trials prompt character transformation. Without them, there is nothing. No conflict, no story. Their experience in these moments drives development and will shape who they become. How do you come up with ideas for trials? Here are a few to get you started. Sacrifice. Do our heroes need to give something up to progress their journey? This could be something material or spiritual. Do they need to leave behind what they know to move forward? Harsh environments. Has a cataclysmic event reduced access to resources? Does it get worse? Are bandits stealing whatever food and water people have left? Despair. How do our heroes cope with everything falling apart around them? How do they respond to despair? This is where we lay the foundation for growth. Crafting the final ordeals, tests, and reward. The final ordeal should be a sum of all past events. What I mean by this is everything needs to lead up to it, whether it's an epic battle against a god-level character or the tearing down of a long-held conspiracy. This is the adventure finale, so make it big and make it theatrical. Write a truly evil villain. Are they a powerful sorcerer, a mad king, or a demon lord of chaos? Think about their traits, how they would behave. Did they come from nothing, or were they born into a life of privilege? Build up to them using lore drip-fed by NPCs. Don't make it too easy. What I mean by this is create near impossible outcomes for the heroes. I touched upon this when I talked about using sacrifices in trials or tests. There should always be some sort of cost to their decision during a trial. You can make that cost as low or high as you like, depending on the situation. Create fulfilling rewards. Don't forget, rewards can be material and spiritual. Yes, they may get a reward for stopping a planet-killing event, but really the true reward is how they've grown and developed, and what this newfound wisdom means for their future. Keep in mind that the rewards should reflect the journey, be it material wealth or spiritual enlightenment. If the journey was about self-discovery, for example, there could even be a fundamental positive change in the world, such as what happens after preventing a cataclysmic event. So, what do you think of the quest plot, and how would you use it when writing your next adventure? Hello everyone, and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be outlining the Voyage and Return plot, and how you can use it to inspire your next TTRPG or Dungeons & Dragons adventure. Voyage and return plot is one of the 7 identified by Christopher Booker in his book The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. The plot begins with our heroes travelling to an unfamiliar world. They are taken in by its splendour, but also its darker underbelly. At the end of their journey, they return home, transformed by their experience. The plot works exceptionally well with tabletop role-playing games because a lot of adventures centre around players exploring mysterious realms that are both rewarding and deadly. Let's break down the 5 stages of the Voyage and return plot and how we can apply it to TTRPG writing. Anticipation and fall into the other world. The journey begins with the anticipation of venturing into the unknown, or other world. In D&D, this introduces the story, the heroes, the setting, and the call for adventure. The fall into the other world may be prompted by a flight of fancy or rejection. The heroes are taken or transported from a familiar existence into a strange new world. An example of flight of fancy would be Peter Pan and the Wizard of Oz. An example of rejection would be Lord of the Flies. In all of these stories, the heroes are learning some lesson and eventually return home changed. Adventure writing tips. Introduce a story hook. Our hero's entry into the other is triggered by an inciting incident. Examples include a mysterious portal opening or a cryptic summons from an eccentric patron. Think's a gig. Set the tone. The description of the other world should prompt a sense of curiosity laced with a threat. Moreover, the surroundings need to feel unfamiliar. Think city dwellers entering a Feywild forest, for example. Or a fiery hell pit. Establish player motivation. Provide strong reasons for the heroes to leave their homes and venture into the world. Perhaps they're rescuing a kidnapped NPC or fleeing from someone or something. An example is the party discovers an ancient relic on the borders of their town. It activates suddenly, creating a portal to a lost jungle city. As they look through, they see lush landscapes and rivers of gold. With their eyes on the riches, they step through, leaving behind their familiar home for an unpredictable new world. Initial fascination or dream. After entering a new world, the heroes are beguiled by its beauty. But of course, there is a sense of something not being quite right. Adventure writing tips. Focus on world building. Demonstrate how unique the world is. Write rich descriptions of landscapes. What colours are the flowers? What can they smell? Begin with warm-up challenges. Early encounters shouldn't be intimidating and instead foster intrigue. Players might solve light puzzles, interact with quirky but memorable NPCs, or deal with minor environmental hazards and traps. These challenges have low stakes. Encourage player exploration. Let players explore freely in a setting without too many threats. Use this time to hint at a deeper conflict beneath the surface, but try not to reveal your hand too much just yet. Example, the party takes in the beauty of the lost city. After trekking through a thick, humid forest, they encounter an abandoned settlement. The only building with signs of life is a magical library, filled with an infinite number of books. The friendly glowworm librarians usher them in and reveal some of the city's history. Our heroes feel welcome, but something is amiss. Frustration stage. As our heroes adjust their new surroundings, they begin to uncover things they don't like, and conflict begins to arise. The initial shine of this new world fades as they encounter challenges that test them. Adventure writing tips. Increase the difficulty of challenges. Introduce challenges that reveal the other world's darker or more dangerous nature. These could include hostile creatures or more serious environmental hazards. This is a time to raise the stakes. Leave breadcrumbs. Drop hints about a deeper mystery or central conflict. Perhaps the world's beauty is sustained by a sinister being demanding a higher price for their help. Or our hero's arrival has upset a natural order, throwing everything off balance. Focus on character development. Encourage players to make difficult choices that reveal our heroes' personalities, values, and weaknesses. Example. Our heroes discover that the lost city's seemingly friendly glowworms are cursed and bound to the library by some unknown entity. While exploring, they discover this unknown entity is a cruel dragon that is now guarding the relic and preventing them from returning home. Their fascination turns to fear as the city's dark secrets are gradually revealed. Nightmare stage. The nightmare stage is where our heroes face their greatest challenge and must confront the danger that awaits them. This stage is often the darkest point in the story and has the highest stakes. The shadow gradually being cast over this world now covers it entirely, and the threat of failure hangs over them. Adventure writing tips. Write a climactic conflict. The stakes are at their highest, and this will force our heroes to act decisively. Think final battle, challenge, or showdown. This is a time to really describe what the threat is and how it will annihilate your players. Make it big and theatrical. Escalate the tension. At this stage, betrayal, overwhelming odds, and fatal flaws all bubble to the surface. Our heroes need to overcome whatever is thrown their way to succeed. By the way, I have a whole video on flaws, which I recommend watching if you are interested in that topic. Establish consequences. Their choices leave a lasting impact, either for our heroes, the other world, or both. Example. The hostile dragon must be defeated, but in doing so it could destroy the city and those kind glowworms. The party must decide whether to destroy the dragon or try to siphon off its magical energy, potentially destroying themselves in the process. Meanwhile, the dragon attacks, forcing our heroes to fight for survival. Thrilling escape and return. In the final stage, the heroes escape the other world, returning home transformed by their journey. This stage often features a mix of relief and a sense of loss or change. You should encourage players to reflect on their character's arc here. Adventure writing tips. Offer a climactic resolution. The escape should be tense and dramatic, with our heroes overcoming their final challenge through, for example, courage and cleverness. Alternatively, they may have had to sacrifice something too. Did they have to lose something of themselves to overcome this final test? Don't wrap up everything too well. Leave open endings. Leave some questions unanswered to hint at future adventures or unintended consequences from the journey. Offer time for reflection. Allow the heroes to process their experience. How has the journey changed them? What lessons have they learned? How does their home seem different? Have they outgrown it? Or have they realised there's no place like home and they have a new sense of gratitude? Example. The heroes destroy the dragon just in time and retrieve the relic, narrowly escaping the collapsing city through the dissolving portal, with a few pockets full of gems. They are welcomed back, but their return brings them no joy due to the destruction they witness. Some feel a sense of loss for the city's beauty and more their glowworm acquaintances. However, others are inspired to seek out similar adventures. The town's elders warn that releasing the dragon's energy could have unintended consequences, prompting future adventures. Adapting the Voyage and Return plot for TTRPGs. Due to links with medieval wargaming, D&D and other tabletop role-playing games typically have a strong fantasy setting, but other genres or settings where the Voyage and Return plot also works well include sci-fi. The heroes might explore an uncharted planet, an abandoned spaceship, or an alternate dimension. The other world could be a mysterious alien civilization or a parallel timeline. Horror. The journey might take our heroes into a haunted house or a cursed town. During the nightmare stage, they could be hunted down by a malevolent spirit or vampire. Q. Strahd. Urban fantasy. Our heroes uncover a hidden school of magic within a modern city. Students learn and develop their skills in private. Why does the Voyage and Return plot work so well in TTRPGs? The Voyage and Return structure offers a solid narrative for TTRPGs because it reflects back our own experiences of discovery and growth. Our heroes enter another world within the campaign setting, learning its rules and nuances, and they return transformed by the challenges they faced along the way. This structure also provides a good balance between exploration, conflict, and resolution. Hello everyone, and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to revisit Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. So far, I've spoken about the previous 5 plots, which I've conveniently put together in a playlist that covers this entire series. The 6th plot, however, and the focus of this video, is comedy. I'll be outlining the different types of comedy plot, which revolve around misunderstandings, mistaken identities, deception, and social confusion, all of which eventually resolve into some sort of ending. But how on earth can you apply this to TTRPGs or Dungeons & Dragons adventures? Well, believe it or not, there are lots of ways to implement comedy. If we take the absurd, for example, let's imagine we have a clumsy wizard in the party who insists on teleporting everywhere. Except they aren't very good at it, and our party keeps finding themselves in more ridiculous environments. Let's say there is a 1 in 6 chance the wizard gets the spell right. You could roll a d6 and list the 5 absurd and comical places the party could teleport to. If they roll a 3, they may find themselves teleported behind a bar of a rowdy tavern, suddenly having to serve impatient and slightly intoxicated patrons. Anyway, back to the structure of comedy. The comedy plot typically follows 3 key elements. The shadow of confusion. Our characters live in a world of uncertainty and frustration. They are shut off from one another in various ways. This could be physically or emotionally. The confusion grows. For dramatic effect, the world or situation our characters are in just keeps getting more absurd, until it can't. Everyone is in a tangle. The confusion is lifted. Everything suddenly becomes clear. Light reveals all and banishes shadows. The situation is miraculously transformed, and there is a joyful union. Modern comedy tends to fall into the following categories, and if you dig deep enough, a lot of TTRPGs will take bits from each. Bathroom comedy. or toilet humour, as you may also know it by. The purpose of this comedy is to disgust. Comedy of ideas. This type of comedy is slightly more highbrow and more sophisticated. Here your characters could argue about or even represent important issues, for example, class, religion and government. An example of this is Pygmalion by George Bernard. Comedy of manners. The comedy of manners satirises customs and behaviours and also norms of a particular class, usually the upper classes or aristocracy. An example of a comedy of manners would be the importance of being earnest. Black comedy. Black comedy or gallows humour is a very unsettling type of comedy. It tends to find humour in subjects that are quite serious or taboo. It can also be a very brutal form of social commentary too. Fast comedy involves highly exaggerated and absurd situations and tends to be very fast-paced and short. Its purpose is to mock real-life situations, people and events. Slapstick comedy is very physical, so think of people running into things, getting punched and falling over. Body language and facial expressions during these performances are very over the top. Parody is a type of comedy that imitates or comments on a particular subject, while mocking it at the same time. Some episodes of The Simpsons are examples of parody. Observational comedy pokes fun at day-to-day life and highly relatable situations. Often it brings to the surface funny details that people otherwise miss as they go about their day. Situational comedy, or sitcoms, revolve around a familiar group of characters who appear in a consistent setting. The humour is born out of everyday situations, such as misunderstandings, and can include some physical comedy. Before I move on to how we apply comedy to TTRPGs, if you've enjoyed everything so far and found what I've said helpful, please do like and subscribe, as that is a great way to support the channel and increases the likelihood of reaching more people, just like you. Right, back to the video. How do we apply comedy to tabletop role-playing games, including Dungeons & Dragons? So comedy can emerge naturally during gameplay, or it can be baked into the plot. Usually, when comedy comes from the players or the GM, it's very spontaneous and difficult to predict. Also, some people are just naturally funny and have a level of emotional intelligence of knowing when to say the right thing at the right time. But if you actually want to write comedy into your TTRPGs, there are ways of going about it. Introduce misunderstandings and mistaken identities. Players may disguise themselves as a way of infiltrating a fortress, but they run into the actual people they are impersonating. This actually happened in a campaign I was in. The GM was very clever and introduced this scenario on the fly. Another quick example is an NPC might mistake the party for another group, and hijinks ensues. This is a situation that is also a very good segue for introducing a side quest, or for delivering helpful information that might have been missed earlier in the adventure. Create absurd situations. A lost kingdom may have bizarre laws, forcing adventurers to navigate ridiculous social norms. Perhaps when they address the king, they need to speak in rhyme. Otherwise, they will be imprisoned. We could even go down the Freaky Friday route. There is probably a better example I could choose here, where a powerful magical spell causes characters to switch bodies and the players need to do their best to imitate the other player or NPC. Use deception and confusion to your advantage. So this needs to be done carefully, otherwise you could end up really annoying your players to the point they feel frustrated. When thinking about confusion, this could mean sending your players on a wild goose chase. Maybe they're looking for a wondrous item that was conveniently or inconveniently switched. Perhaps an NPC was tricked or lost something promised to the characters in a bet. Alternatively, with deception, you could have a talking portrait that speaks in riddles and tall tales, but occasionally gives away the odd prophecy if it likes who is standing before it. Resolving the nonsense. So with the exception of dark comedies, most comedy-driven games tend to have a conventional happy ending, be it the curse is lifted and everyone rejoices, or a character's true identity is revealed. All of the loose ends are tied up in a humorous way. You could even end the game with a celebration. Perhaps there is a wedding or festival that our heroes attend before moving on to the next adventure. 3 quick fire tips for creating a comedy-driven adventure. Use exaggeration, turn up the absurd. Think of something silly and keep exaggerating. Make tables and chairs come alive, for example. Give them thoughts and feelings. Maybe our heroes enter an incredibly bureaucratic town, for whatever reason, and filling out paperwork is more dangerous than actually going into battle. What does that look like? How will you write it? Encourage improvisation and playfulness. This doesn't really need too much elaboration, but let your players get into it and riff off one another and the world. Write unreliable NPCs. Unreliable NPCs, or narrators, are personally one of my favourite things to write. Imagine you have a group of NPCs who constantly contradict themselves or forget their own lies. This can really add layers of comedic misunderstanding. Of course, don't do this too much as it could get very annoying after a while. Timing is key for this one. But what does comedy look like across different RPG genres? I like to write historical fiction RPGs that are fantasy leaning, though not necessarily comedic. But if I were to write a more light-hearted adventure, I could write something around a group of bumbling nobles who want to stage a coup, but courtly expectations keep getting in their way. This example is probably closest to a comedy of manners, and perhaps every time they try to plot something, they find themselves in another banquet, or distracted with a hunting trip, with random NPCs. Alternatively, a comedic thriller-style RPG may focus on a band of spies who are trying to infiltrate a specific government building, but they keep activating traps that result in absurd consequences. So what do you think? Will you be using elements of comedy in your next game, or are you already doing so without even realising? A solo game that I recently played, Outliers, leans very heavily into the absurd and is a great exercise for training your brain to think in that way. I'll drop a link to it below in the description. You could even write or play a parody game using a high fantasy setting or one that is inspired by a previous campaign. Before I sign off though, don't forget to like and subscribe as it's a great way to support the channel. Anyway, that's all for today folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video I'll be talking about the tragedy plot from Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. The tragedy plot begins in a similar way to Rags to Riches and The Quest. However, instead of the call being the first of our 5 stages, our heroes have to resist temptation. Because of this, the tragedy plot follows a completely different trajectory, and our heroes are drawn towards something forbidden, or are compelled to take much darker actions. In Dungeons & Dragons, there are of course plenty of tragic plots. Take one of my favourites, The Curse of Strahd for example. I very much like tragic stories, and games where the supposed heroes don't always get what they want, or realise the best outcome from themselves. And I do like to weave this into my games. Take my Shadow Dark solo one-shot for example. If you want to write an adventure that follows the structure of a tragic tale, then you need to understand its 5 stages. Anticipation. Our heroes are unfulfilled, something is missing in their lives, and they are fixating on some object, desire, or course of action that will make them feel complete. Think power, fame, or lust, the usual things that can corrupt a person. Dream. Outwardly, our heroes are achieving what they want. In Dungeons & Dragons, an example would be a character making a pact or deal with a demon. Yes, they are going to be living their best life, but at what cost? Spoiler alert, it's always something bad, and some level of trickery is usually involved from the demon's side. Frustration. Things unravel slowly or quickly for our heroes. They begin to overreact and slip into committing darker acts. Over time, this makes salvation less likely. At this point, a malevolent figure may appear who wants to cause them harm. Alternatively, this figure may also take the guise of a helper and pretend to be their friend when all the while they are secretly scheming. Nightmare. Everything descends into chaos. Whatever plans our heroes had of living happily ever after evaporate. They feel fear and despair as their lives fall apart. Fate and the forces of opposition close in. Their comeuppance is looming. Destruction. External forces or a heinous act of violence destroy our heroes. Few mourn them and the darkness lifts. Those who knew our fallen heroes rejoice at their passing. Tragedy plots are generally cautionary tales that show us there are consequences to our actions. This makes them an ideal structure for role-playing games, as you can really get into character development and fatal flaws. Basically, all the rewarding bits of storytelling. But how do you begin to write a truly tragic adventure? Fortunately, I have 5 helpful tips for that. But before I start, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please give it a like or subscribe, as it's a great way to support the channel. Without further ado, let's begin. Incorporate personal stakes. GMs achieve this by linking the character's backstory to the events or plot unfolding in the adventure. Perhaps a long-lost relative has suddenly resurfaced as an NPC, and maybe our hero carries some guilt as they felt they had abandoned them in the pursuit of a goal. Alternatively, one of our heroes may be tempted by something related to a fatal flaw. If they're impulsive and rush into things, perhaps a particularly pushy NPC wants them to do a favour for a few gold. It's only a small job after all, and easy money, so they say. Lastly, make sure there are consequences to your players' actions. Nothing happens in a vacuum. You need to show how they are responsible for their downfall. What decisions did they make that got them to where they are now? Create ethical conflicts. An ethical conflict occurs when right and wrong are not always clear. When a hero has to make choices in a tragedy, it often results in some suffering, no matter what they do to avoid it. When thinking of the scale of an ethical conflict, it can occur at individual and societal levels. So at the individual level, we have, for example, our heroes or NPCs who are in a similar social standing to them. At the societal level, choices are made by, say, the monarchy or other powerful figures, and these decisions affect many people. Also, keep in mind ends and means. What I mean by this is, do the ends justify the means? Does a morally right action result in a negative outcome? Alternatively, does a morally wrong action result in a positive outcome? As a GM, you can really build an engaging narrative when you introduce these types of opposing situations, as it forces your players to think and reflect. Consider a slow burn tragedy. Instead of a sudden downfall, you can eke out your hero's demise with a slow burn narrative arc or story. By slow burn, I don't mean add a ton of padding and fluff, as this will bog your adventure down. Making the plot boring. We want a slow burn, not slow. Subtle foreshadowing is a powerful and effective technique you can deploy when crafting a slow burn. Introduce a pattern of small failures that foreshadow the succumbing to the fatal flaw. If hubris is a big part of a character's downfall, bring in examples or escalations of this. How will they be tested? Why do they keep failing? What is it that they are not learning? What is holding them back? Also, think about where everyone is when our protagonists are experiencing these darker moments. Isolation is often weaved into tragedies and is a catalyst for that descent into failure. Take my favourite tragic hero, Michael from The Godfather, and how his isolation worsens as he gets more powerful. Another thing to consider is how your NPCs will respond to your heroes. How will their perception of them change? Will some stop offering assistance? This can be interesting when you're playing a solo game, as you can roll for oracle checks to see how hostile they can be. Build an illusion of control. Building an illusion of control in a tragic plot makes more of a show-stopping downfall, as the story develops in such a way that the characters think they might be able to escape their fate. Except the GM and the other players know differently, or not, depending on the route the GM takes. The best tragedies build the illusion that the characters can change their fate, until they realise it's too late and they've been the architects of their own demise all along. If we use our Godfather example again, Michael believes he's only one step away from building a legitimate empire, and it's this belief that propels him forward to make even more damning choices. Use prophecies and bad omens that build up to the inevitable struggle against destiny. Introduce small successes that suggest whatever the characters are going through will work out in the end. Introduce NPCs who actually overturn their fate, suggesting our heroes can do the same. Use signs and themes to build tension. Tragedy is most powerful when reinforced by strong themes and symbols. An off the top of my head example is using an object that, while imbues the owner with power, also takes something from them. Perhaps after a bloody skirmish, one of our heroes claims a magical sword that, while it makes them more powerful, also corrupts their soul. This, of course, represents a price our character is paying to grow in power. Other ideas to consider include using weather or environmental changes to mirror the downfall. In my Anne Boleyn adventure, for example, the game begins during a vicious tempest or storm which mirrors the discontent and changes England was going through. Introduce imagery that reinforces tragic themes, such as haunting dream sequences. Think about what the person sees during these dreams. Do they see any animals, and if so, what lore is associated with them? Take ravens, for example. They can represent death, transformation, and rebirth, among lots of other things, of course. Creating past lore to mirror our hero's tragic downfall. Think about fables and cautionary tales. Do these stories represent our hero's current adventure timeline? Do these tales suggest our heroes can't escape their fate? What character types or NPCs should you include in your tragic adventure? To make your tragedy more meaningful, innocent NPCs need to get hurt, and Christopher Booker mentions the 4 different types of bystanders who suffer due to the tragic hero's actions. Also, the examples Booker gives are all from Shakespeare plays. The first one is the good man, and this is represented by Polonius from Hamlet. Second, we have the rival, who is Duncan from Macbeth. The innocent girl is Desdemona from Othello, and a temptress is Cleopatra from Antony and Cleopatra. If you really like tragedies, you'll enjoy my video on Anakin Skywalker's fatal flaws and how we can apply what we know about him to creating characters in Dungeons & Dragons and other TTRPGs. I've also put together a playlist on the other 6 plots in this series, so you can learn more about overcoming the monster and the quest, for example. Before I go, if you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe so more people just like you can find it. Anyway, that's all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to talk about Rebirth, the 7th plot from Christopher Booker's The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. So far, I've discussed the other 6, including Overcoming the Monster and Rags to Riches. I put all of them into a playlist, so if you want to watch them all in one go, you can. While this is one of the lesser talked about plots, it still has applications in TTRPGs, especially Dungeons & Dragons. For example, where the main characters go on an adventure to redeem themselves. Unlike the other plots, Rebirth follows a particular sequence, instead of defined stages. Spell of Darkness. Our lead character falls under the shadow of a dark power. The reason for this may not be initially clear, but they could have bargained with someone or something, and now that decision is beginning to affect them. The status quo. At the moment, things on the surface are going well. The otherworldly entity has held up its end of the bargain, and its threat no longer seems to be posing a problem. The threat returns. Over time, our lead character begins to see the error of their ways and regrets getting into this mess. The threat of this malevolent force returns and begins to wield power over them. No end in sight. More time passes and our lead character is imprisoned in a state of living death. The dark power begins to own them. Redemption. If the imprisoned person is female, a hero frees them. If the imprisoned person is male, a young woman or child frees them instead. It can be helpful to think of this plot as a kind of chrysalis state, like a caterpillar emerging as a butterfly that so happens to be stronger and wiser. The purpose of the suspended state of animation is to test our protagonist's character, so they can fully appreciate the final reward. Good examples of the Rebirth plot are Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, The Secret Garden, and A Christmas Carol. Before I explain exactly how you can apply this plot to your adventure writing, if you found what I said useful already, please like and subscribe, as it's a great way to support the channel. If we begin with the Spell of Darkness, our NPCs have fallen under the shadow of a darker power. But what does this look like? Well, it could be a pact, curse, possession, or some misguided choice that gives them something beneficial in exchange for something sinister. 2 story examples of this are: a patron grants a warlock powerful abilities, but gradually demands that the warlock carry out their wicked deeds in return. Patrons in D&D include fiends, the Great Old One, or Archfey. Next up, a noble but naive ruler makes a deal with a maleficent entity to save their kingdom, but unbeknownst to them, they are dooming it. So, to get these adventures off the ground, you don't want to reveal too soon that the dark entity is actually, well, dark. Make the choices seem rational and understandable to your players. Next up in the sequence is status quo, or in other words, false peace. Everything seems to be going well, yet cracks are beginning to show. If we progress in our warlock story, they're enjoying the power they wield. They are actually pleased with the bargain they made. Nothing too terrible has happened yet. Maybe they've gotten off lightly, but they do keep having these odd dreams every now and again. Strange voices are whispering in them, but they can't quite make out what they are saying. In the case of our noble but naive ruler, perhaps this entity has helped them fight off a rival, and the kingdom is once again secure. Surprisingly, the entity has taken quite an interest in the kingdom, in particular its ancient forests, but nothing untoward has happened yet. Our ruler is thankful that the entity protected the citizens. In fact, they even feel they owe their new friend more. At this point, you may want to use some subtle foreshadowing to suggest the inevitable downfall or threat. The threat returns. This is where everything starts to get a little real, and the true cost of the pact or deal is revealed. The dark power begins to assert its authority, and its demands are getting a bit much, to say the least. Our protagonists are beginning to regret making the deal. Going back to our warlock example, perhaps the time has come for them to make some sort of sacrifice. This is a line they never wanted to cross, but they did make a deal with a maleficent entity, so you can't really feel that sorry for them. They feel they're beginning to lose whatever shred of humanity they have left. The ruler, in our other example, has realised they've been duped by a Spore Lord who wants to take over their kingdom and will use the ancient dense forest as a dwelling. The Spore Lord wants to infect the citizens and use them as puppets. The ruler feels powerless and doesn't know what to do. So at this point in the adventure, you want to introduce a moral dilemma. Does the protagonist try and break through the bargain? If so, what's the cost? Or do they succumb to the dark force and embrace it? We're now at no end in sight. At this point, our protagonist is trapped in a state of living death. But what does this look like? Living death can mean several things, and doesn't just refer to a physical state of being. It can be psychological too. In the warlock story, no end in sight can manifest as the warlock losing their humanity. They're sinking deeper towards evil as their patron gets them to commit increasingly heinous acts. They are no longer thinking for themselves and are just following orders, without question. They're obsessed with the power they are wielding, almost to the point of addiction. Alternatively, our ruler refuses to obey the Spore Lord and is imprisoned deep within the ancient forest, where nobody can find them. The canopy of the trees is so thick that the darkness consumes it. A network of glowing mycelium surrounds them. They question if this fate is worse than losing the war. These are examples of absolute despair where there seems to be no way out. However, now is an opportunity to delicately hint at a possible path to salvation, as you want to set up redemption. We're at the last stage now, redemption. This is where NPCs, or maybe our heroes, free the protagonist from their fate. Now, when writing a redemption scene, it should be challenging, costly, and meaningful. Maybe our warlock is saved by a cleric who sacrifices themselves to save the warlock's soul and free them from the patron. The warlock's relationship with the cleric is also hinted at throughout the game. Maybe they were a close relative or friend. Perhaps after this, our warlock struggles to accept the sacrifice. Over time, they realise the true cost of obtaining power and try to save others from taking the same path. But what does redemption look like for our ruler imprisoned in the ancient woods? Maybe 100 years have passed and explorers find them. But these explorers aren't just anyone. They are distant relatives of those who became trapped in the kingdom of our Spore Lord. They've worked with an alchemist who has developed a potion that can awaken our ruler from their chrysalis state. The ruler is the only person alive who knows the layout of the tower, which the Spore Lord is holed up in. The explorers need this information to break in and free everyone from this evil. The ruler vows never to be duped again and wants to help rebuild the kingdom to its former glory. So that's a Rebirth plot. I must admit that this plot lends itself to more emotionally driven campaigns, as it evokes a lot of reflection, especially as your players are forced to make tough choices and navigate moral dilemmas. This is the last video in my 7th plot series, so if you want to watch them all in full, just head over to my 7 plot playlist. Also, if you've enjoyed what I've talked about, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Anyway, that's all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.